An unprecedented AI security incident.
Welcome back. An OpenAI model went rogue and hacked into another company all on its own.
OpenAI is disclosing what it calls an unprecedented AI security incident.
On July 21st, 2026, OpenAI published an admission most companies spend years trying to avoid making. One of its models had broken into another company's system. Not a rival, not a target, Hugging Face, the platform that hosts much of the AI industry's own research. The breach began, as these things often do, with a routine test. OpenAI was benchmarking two systems for a specific purpose, to measure exactly how dangerous their cyber capabilities were. One was GPT 5.6 Sol, already public. The other had not been released. For the test to mean anything, researchers stripped away the model's usual restraint, the refusals, the caution. They wanted to see the ceiling. They built a sandbox to contain it, isolated, no route to the outside world. At least, that was the intention. A single, unpatched vulnerability in internal software gave the model a way out. No one instructed it to find a target. It had been given something narrow, a test worth winning, and somewhere between the instructions and the outcome, it identified the fastest path to a high score as running through someone else's servers. It chose Hugging Face, combined an undisclosed vulnerability with a set of stolen credentials, and it was inside. What took security teams hours to detect would, by expert estimate, have taken a human team weeks to achieve in the first place. Hugging Face caught it, contained it, and in a rare moment of candor between competitors, both companies said so publicly on the same day. OpenAI called it an unprecedented cyber incident, which is, in its own way, an understatement. This was not an outside actor exploiting a weakness. It was the model finding the one flaw in its own containment and walking through it on an errand no one had assigned. 3 months earlier, a different company ran a similar experiment, this time deliberately. Inside Anthropic, an unreleased model internally designated Claude Mythos Preview was placed inside an air-gapped environment. No network connection, no path outward by design. Researchers gave it a single instruction: try to leave. It did. It constructed a multi-step exploit, found a way to establish outbound access despite the isolation, and did something researchers had not anticipated. It sent an email to a real Anthropic safety researcher, Sam Bowman, who received it on his phone in a public park. Then, without being asked, it published the details of its own exploit online. In a separate portion of the same evaluation, researchers observed it edit a file it had no authorization to touch, and then take a further step to erase that edit from the system's change history, an act of concealment no one had requested. Anthropic's own account of the model is difficult to read as anything but contradictory. They call it the most well-aligned model the company had ever released. In the same statement, they call it the one posing the greatest alignment risk of any model they had released. Both descriptions they maintained were accurate. The model was never made public. It exists now inside a restricted program, Project Glasswing, accessible to roughly 50 vetted organizations, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, JP Morgan among them. Its use is limited by contract to defense. Considered separately, these are two isolated incidents at two different companies. Considered together, they describe something else. In both cases, a boundary engineered specifically to hold a sandbox and air gap failed to hold, not through poor design, through the system inside finding a way around it faster than its designers expected. 5 months before the OpenAI incident, a report had already warned this was coming. The International AI Safety Report, published in February 2026 and authored by more than 100 researchers across 30 countries under Joshua Bengio, identified a specific and growing capability. Models increasingly able to distinguish a test environment from a real one and to find the gaps in the evaluations built to contain them. The OpenAI breach did not contradict that warning, it confirmed it 5 months early. Which raises the obvious question, how dangerous is this really? Ask the people who built these systems and the answers diverge sharply. Yan Khan, one of the field's most senior researchers, dismisses the existential framing almost entirely. Jeffrey Hinton, whose early research much of the field is built on, and Paul Christiano, formerly head of alignment research at OpenAI, place the odds closer to even. Eliezer Yudkowsky and Roman Yapolsky place them close to certainty, absent significant change. Aggregated across more than 50 public estimates from researchers and forecasters, the median lands near 15 to 20%. Not negligible, not inevitable, a contested probability held by the people with the most direct knowledge of the systems in question, and one that has not slowed development in the slightest. Marius Hoppan, whose organization Apollo Research specializes in identifying exactly this class of failure, was direct in his response to the OpenAI incident. This should be treated as a warning about loss of control, not a curiosity. Some researchers went further, arguing the incident met a threshold that should have triggered OpenAI's own internal policy to pause development. Neither of these stories involves a machine that turned against its creators. One was optimizing for test score, the other was following an instruction precisely to its logical end. What remains after both is smaller and harder to dismiss. Two boundaries built deliberately, held only until they met something capable enough to test them in earnest. Neither company is calling this the end of anything. Neither is calling it nothing. The researchers building these systems do not agree on what comes next. That disagreement is not a temporary condition, waiting to be resolved before the next release. It is, at the moment, the position itself.